Before we dive into today's story, I wanted to take a quick moment to talk about this channel. We're a community dedicated to respectfully remembering the victims and uncovering the facts behind true crime cases and unsolved disappearances. If you value this approach and want to support respectful storytelling, becoming a subscriber is the best way to never miss an update. If you find our work meaningful, leaving a like helps immensely in bringing these important stories to a wider audience. In the comments, we encourage you to share messages of remembrance for the victims or thoughts on why it is important to keep these cases alive. Let's keep the discussion respectful and focused on the facts. Your support is what allows me to continue this work with the care and dedication it deserves. Now, let's get into the case. In the late summer of 2013, 19-year-old Bryce Laspisa was at a transitional point in his life. A student at Sierra College in Rocklin, California, he had been living with his girlfriend in a campus apartment. Described by friends and family as a typical, well-liked young man, Bryce's behavior had begun to concern those close to him in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. He had started acting out of character, displaying signs of paranoia, and making alarming statements that worried his girlfriend. After a series of escalating incidents, his girlfriend contacted Bryce's parents, who lived approximately 400 miles south in Laguna Niguel, Orange County. Together, they decided it would be best for Bryce to come home for a while. On the morning of the 27th of August 2013, Bryce packed his Toyota Highlander SUV and began the long drive south on Interstate 5, a route he had traveled many times before. The drive, under normal circumstances, should have taken about 6 to 7 hours. However, Bryce never arrived. Instead, his journey transformed into a baffling 22-hour odyssey, marked by strange stops, prolonged phone calls, and inexplicable decisions. Rather than taking the most direct route, he diverted east towards the Mojave Desert. His first major stop was in the town of Buttonwillow, Kern County, where he remained for several hours. Throughout the day and into the night, Bryce was in frequent, lengthy contact with both his parents and his girlfriend via phone. The conversations, according to his parents, were circular and deeply concerning. Bryce sounded confused, paranoid, and at times emotionally detached. He made references to having an epiphany and spoke of needing to figure things out. His parents, Mike and Karen Laspisa, growing increasingly frantic, pleaded with him to pull over at a hotel or a police station. They even offered to drive out and meet him wherever he was. Bryce assured them he was okay and that he would continue driving home, but his actions told a different story. He was meandering, stopping for hours at rest areas and showing no urgency to complete his trip. This series of cryptic communications and erratic travel set the stage for a mystery that would culminate in a remote, devastating crash site. As night fell on the 27th of August, Bryce Laspisa's bewildering journey continued. After his prolonged stop in Buttonwillow, he eventually got back on the road, but not towards home. He drove further south and east, skirting the edges of the Mojave Desert. His phone calls with his parents became the epicenter of the unfolding crisis. In one of the last substantial conversations, Bryce told his mother he had pulled over to sleep. However, cell phone tower pings would later reveal he was still driving. Desperate and fearing for his mental state, his parents made the difficult decision to report him as a missing endangered person to the California Highway Patrol. In the early hours of the 28th of August, they provided his license plate and description, hoping officers could locate him on the vast highway network. The crucial break came later that morning. At approximately 6:30 a.m. on the 28th of August, a truck driver reported a single vehicle crash down a steep embankment near Castaic Lake, off the Interstate 5 corridor in Los Angeles County, hundreds of miles from where Bryce's parents believed him to be. CHP officers and Los Angeles County Fire Department personnel responded to the remote scene. They found Bryce's silver Toyota Highlander at the bottom of a 15-foot embankment, just feet from the lake's edge. This suffered catastrophic damage from what appeared to be a high-speed, deliberate drive off the side of the road. It was not a skid or loss of control accident. The vehicle's airbags had deployed. Inside, investigators found Bryce's wallet, cell phone, laptop, and other personal belongings. A small amount of blood was present on the driver's side airbag. However, Bryce Laspisa was nowhere to be found. The scene presented an immediate paradox. The severity of the crash was such that a person could not have walked away without serious, likely critical injuries. Yet, there was no sign of him in the immediate vicinity. Search and rescue teams with dogs were quickly deployed. They scoured the rugged brush-covered hillsides around Castaic Lake and used sonar to search the lake's waters. Despite an intensive search that lasted for days, no trace of Bryce was found. No body, no clothing, no trail. He had vanished from the wreckage of his own car. The crash site, rather than providing answers, deepened the mystery exponentially. How could a severely injured teenager disappear from a remote accident scene without a trace? Did he wander away in a confused state and succumb to the elements elsewhere? Or did the crash itself tell a different, more intentional story? In the immediate aftermath of the crash, the investigation by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, LASD, and CHP focused on two primary grim possibilities: that Bryce Laspisa's body was in Castaic Lake, or that he had wandered away injured and died in the surrounding wilderness. Dive teams meticulously searched the lake near the crash site, while ground teams expanded their radius day after day. No body was recovered. Attention then turned to reconstructing Bryce's final hours and understanding his state of mind. Detectives retrieved data from his cell phone and laptop. The phone records confirmed the long, distressing calls with his parents and revealed no contact with unknown individuals that would suggest foul play. His laptop and social media showed no evidence of planning for disappearance or suicidal ideation, though his recent behavior was clearly troubled. A critical and puzzling piece of evidence was discovered near the crash site, adding another layer of complexity. Approximately a mile from where the Highlander went over the embankment, a witness came forward to report seeing a young man matching Bryce's description, sitting on an embankment overlooking the highway in the pre-dawn hours before the crash. This sighting suggested Bryce had stopped voluntarily before the final, violent descent. Furthermore, investigators found two separate, curious deposits of his personal belongings along the roadside before the crash point. One was a pile of clothes, another contained personal items like a watch. This behavior seemed to indicate a deliberate, step-by-step process of discarding possessions, perhaps symbolic of a mental break or a specific intent. Bryce's mother, Karen Laspisa, became the public face of the search. She tirelessly organized volunteer ground searches, maintained a prolific social media presence to keep the case alive, and collaborated with private investigators and nonprofit organizations like the Laura Recovery Center. She publicly voiced her belief that Bryce may have survived the crash and, in an injured and confused state, been picked up by someone, either a good Samaritan who didn't realize who he was or someone with malicious intent. She pointed to the lack of a body as a shred of hope, but also as a source of agonizing limbo. The official investigation, without physical evidence of a crime or a body, gradually slowed. The case was never classified as a homicide, but remained an open missing persons case. The prevailing theory among authorities leaned towards a tragic conclusion: that Bryce, in a profound psychological crisis, staged his own disappearance after the crash, likely succumbing to his injuries or drowning in the vast lake, his body simply not yet found. As years passed without a single confirmed trace of Bryce Laspisa, the case solidified into a modern enigma, giving rise to multiple competing theories, each with its own compelling points and fatal flaws. The official and most widely accepted theory is that Bryce, suffering an acute psychotic break, potentially triggered by undisclosed personal stress, experimentation with drugs, though toxicology was never performed, or the onset of a latent mental health condition, engaged in a series of dissociative behaviors. This explains the erratic driving, cryptic calls, discarding of belongings, and the final deliberate crash. In this scenario, he either died instantly from injuries not apparent at the scene, wandered into the lake and drowned, or succumbed to exposure in the remote hills. The sheer size of Castaic Lake and the rugged terrain support the idea that a body could remain hidden, a more hopeful, yet increasingly unlikely, theory held by his mother and some online sleuths is the voluntary disappearance or accidental pickup scenario. This posits that Bryce survived the crash with minor injuries and in a fugue state or with a desire to start anew, hitchhiked away. The lack of any financial activity, social security use, or digital footprint since 2013 makes this theory extremely difficult to sustain. The foul play theory suggests Bryce may have been picked up after the crash by someone with harmful intentions. Proponents point to the remote location and the possibility of him being vulnerable and disoriented. However, no evidence has ever surfaced to support abduction, and the meticulously reconstructed timeline shows no interaction with others prior to the crash. The investigation has encountered numerous dead ends. Reported sightings from across the country have been diligently checked by the family and investigators, only to be debunked. Cadaver dogs hit on scents in specific areas around the lake, but subsequent searches yielded nothing. The case lacks the forensics typical of a homicide. It is a void of evidence. For law enforcement, without a body or clear signs of a crime, resources for active investigation have dwindled. For the Laspisa family, the absence of closure is a perpetual torture. They are trapped in a unique hell. Without proof of death, they cannot grieve fully. Without proof of life, they cannot hope realistically. The case is a stark study in the limitations of investigations when the central subject vanishes without a discernible motive or destination, leaving behind only a trail of questions that lead to a silent lake and an empty wilderness. Over a decade later, the disappearance of Bryce Laspisa endures, not as a fading cold case, but as a persistent digital echo within the true crime community. It is frequently featured in podcasts, YouTube documentaries, and lengthy online forum threads, often cited as one of the most baffling missing persons cases of the 2010s. Its resonance lies in the hauntingly detailed, pre-disappearance timeline, the hours of phone calls, the witness stops, the discarded belongings, that provides a gripping narrative framework. Unlike cases with zero leads, Bryce's story is rich with data points that somehow amount to zero conclusive answers. This paradox makes it a prime subject for analysis and speculation, a puzzle that seems like it should be solvable, but remains stubbornly opaque. For the Laspisa family, the public's fascination is a double-edged sword. While it keeps Bryce's name and face in circulation, potentially generating new tips, it also means reliving the trauma annually. Karen Laspisa continues to advocate, giving interviews and managing social media pages dedicated to finding her son. Each new tip, however faint, rekindles a hope that is inevitably tempered by years of disappointment. The emotional toll of existing in this indefinite state known as ambiguous loss is profound and unrelenting. The family has been forced to construct a life around an unanswered question, a space where grief and hope are inextricably and painfully intertwined. The legacy of Bryce Laspisa's case extends beyond the mystery itself. It serves as a sobering case study in mental health crises and intervention. It raises difficult questions. Could different responses during those long phone calls have altered the outcome? What resources exist for families dealing with a loved one in a distant, apparent psychological crisis? The case also highlights the limitations of search and recovery in vast American landscapes. Castaic Lake, like many other bodies of water and wilderness areas, can swallow secrets whole. Ultimately, Bryce Laspisa's story is a modern American ghost story. His empty car by the lake shore is a tangible relic of a vanished life. His fate, whether a private tragedy or a hidden survival, remains suspended in the California air, a reminder that even in an age of digital tracking and constant connection, a person can still step out of a wrecked vehicle and into the absolute unknown, leaving behind only silence and an unyielding search for truth. As we conclude today's story, let's once again remember the lives affected. If you found this exploration meaningful and want to support respectful storytelling about real cases, please consider leaving a like. It helps more than you know. To stay updated with our deep dives into unresolved histories, hit that subscribe button, and in the comments below, feel free to share a thought in memory or why you believe remembering these stories matters. Thank you for watching and for being a part of this thoughtful community.